President Volodymyr Zelensky accuses Russia of weaponizing everything from food to energy to children in its war against Ukraine during his address to the United Nations General Assembly. Azerbaijan launches a so-called anti-terrorist operation in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, sparking fears of renewed conflict.
Critics of the EU's plans aimed at preventing online child abuse say it's a major violation of people's privacy.
A major slowdown in German manufacturing is dragging down Europe's economic growth, according to projections from the OECD.
Relations with our neighbors.
With Russia in the spotlight, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky took to the podium at the annual United Nations General Assembly in New York. In his first direct address to the body since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of his country last year, Zelensky slammed Moscow's actions and the threat its nuclear arsenal posed to his nation and the world.
Terrorists have no right to hold nuclear weapons. No right. But truly, not the nukes are the scariest now. While nukes remain in place, the mass destruction is gaining its momentum. National security advisors
Zelensky then accused Russia of blackmailing the globe with food.
Into real dirty bombs. And it is a clear Russia's attempt to weaponize the food shortage on the global market in exchange for recognition for some, if not all, of the captured territories.
He also highlighted the energy crisis and the deportation of Ukrainian children to Russia, something he labeled a genocide. Zelensky said he would present the details of his peace plan to the Security Council on Wednesday.
US President Joe Biden has called on world leaders to stand up to what he called Russian aggression and to continue to support Ukraine. Speaking at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Biden said if Russia's invasion was not opposed by the world community, no nation's sovereignty would be secure.
Russia believes that the world will grow weary and allow it to brutalize Ukraine without consequence. But I ask you this. If we abandon the core principles of the United States to appease an aggressor, can any member state in this body feel confident that they are protected? If you allow Ukraine to be carved up, is the independence of any nation secure? I'd respectfully suggest the answer is no.
War in Ukraine is far from the world's only crisis. The United Nations Secretary General invoked a host of other urgent challenges facing humanity.
Our world is becoming unhinged. Geopolitical tensions are rising. Global challenges are mounting. And we seem incapable of coming together to respond. We confront a host of existential threats, from the climate crisis to disruptive technologies, and we do so at a time of chaotic transition.
This year's UN General Assembly, the world body's 78th, runs until September 26th.
Renewed fighting in the Nagorno-Karabakh region on Tuesday after Azerbaijan's military shelled Armenian positions in what Baku has described as an anti-terrorist operation. At least 2 civilians were killed and 23 wounded by heavy artillery fire around the region's capital. The clashes began after 2 civilians and 4 Azeri policemen were killed in landmine explosions in the area. Azerbaijan said it was ready to negotiate if Karabakh Armenian forces surrendered, while Moscow called for calm.
Российская сторона настоятельно призывает конфликтующие стороны остановить кровопролитие, незамедлительно прекратить военные действия и вернуться на путь политико-дипломатического урегулирования.
The President of the European Council, Charles Michel, called on Baku to immediately stop its military actions to allow for a genuine dialogue with the Karabakh Armenians. Armenia and Azerbaijan have fought 2 wars over the region since the fall of the Soviet Union 30 years ago. In the early 1990s, the conflict resulted in over 30,000 deaths and Armenian control over the territory. In 2022, after a 6-week war, Azerbaijan gained control of a third of Nagorno.
Greek MEP Eva Kaili is challenging the Belgian justice system. Through her lawyers, she claims that the country's police and secret services violated her parliamentary immunity. The former European Parliament Vice President, who was arrested last December for participating in a corruption scandal linked to non-EU countries, including Qatar, is not the only one who has taken legal action against the Belgian justice system. The two other MEPs involved in the scandal have also appealed: Italian MEP Andrea Cozzolino and Belgian MEP Mark Tarabella. If they are vindicated, the whole case could collapse. On Tuesday in Brussels, the first hearing took place in the now familiar Palais de Justice.
Οι ενστάσεις αυτές στηρίζονται σε δύο πυλώνες. Ο ένας είναι ότι παραβιάστηκε το δικαίωμα στην ασυλία που έχει η κυρία Καηλή από τις μυστικές υπηρεσίες του Βελγίου. Και αυτό επάγεται απόλυτη ακυρότητα της προδικασίας. Και η δεύτερη και η βασικότερη ένσταση είναι ότι ο ανακριτής της υπόθεσης, κ. Μισελ Κλες, είχε σοβαρό κόλλημα για να μην είναι ανακριτής. Και το απέκρυψε αυτό το κόλλημα. Το οποίο συνίσταται στο ότι ο γιος του κυρίου Κλες, του ανακριτή, μαζί με τον γιο βασικής υπόπτου και εμπλεκόμενης ευρωβουλευτού, είχαν κοινή εταιρεία.
Eva Kaili was released from prison in April and is active once again in the European Parliament, acting as an independent MEP while she awaits trial.
High interest rates and persistent inflation are dragging down Europe's growth prospects, particularly in Germany. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, has released its interim projections for the rest of this year and next. The euro area remains on course for a modest expansion of 0.6% in 2023, but it's being held back by a slowdown in German manufacturing.
Globally, the prospects for manufacturing look weak, and while the outlook is still positive for services, it has deteriorated since May. We see large differences across countries. The outlook is stronger in the US than it is in Europe, and across both areas, companies now expect less activity than they did 6 months ago.
There's significant divergence within the Eurozone's main economies. While Germany's growth is forecast to fall 0.2%, Spain will surge by 2.3%, and France and Italy will see slight gains. Falling energy prices are boosting growth globally, with the US and some emerging countries performing well in 2023. But China's stagnant economy is expected to restrict growth around the world next year.
Clean up online. That was the slogan chanted by demonstrators in Brussels who demanded swift EU action to adopt the child sexual abuse regulation, also known as chat control. The activists wore hazmat suits and were holding cleaning materials, symbolising the internet being a dirty and dangerous place for kids in Europe. Some demonstrators of the NGO Brave movement were themselves victims of sexual abuse in their childhood. Now they want the EU to act against online sexual predators, grooming and the harassment of children.
1 in 5 children, 1 in 5 of your children will be sexually abused before the age of 15 or 16. And a lot of them, it will be online. And unfortunately, Europe at the moment hosts 60% of the world sexual abuse online.
The Chat Control Act would require big tech companies to scan for and detect child sexual abuse material, even in private encrypted messages. While some member states remain critical of the issue, activists call on the EU not to water down the legislation.
This is really a legislation that can protect the children online. Online and the online community is constantly growing because of the technology and the tech companies expanding, and we don't know what the future holds. This is so new, all of the new technology, social media that has come to fruition in my childhood. We don't know how that affects the children, and this legislation would protect the children now, but also in the future.
But the Chat Control Act has provoked backlash among pro-privacy activists and NGOs across Europe. In an open letter, they warned that in its current form, the law would allow the scanning of people's messages, violating in the process the rights of hundreds of millions of Europeans. One researcher tells Euronews that she hopes the law will fail.
The technology will not only look for child pornography. When the technology is there to look for something, we know that it will be used for other things, right? Because you can check anything. Once the mechanism is in place, governments, big tech, hackers that actually hack into systems, which is something that we also know happen, can actually use this hole to check into our communications.
EU member states will discuss the Chat Control Act at the end of September. The European Parliament will also discuss it in October, with a possible vote on the issue later this year.
Manchester United are set to face Bayern Munich in a highly anticipated Champions League clash at the Allianz Arena on Wednesday. United, who have had a turbulent start to their Premier League season with 3 losses in their first 5 games, will desperately be looking to bounce back. But with Harry Kane leading the German attack, this game could further test Erik ten Hag's early season expectations. Jadon Sancho didn't train with the first team as his fallout with the manager continues, whilst Bayern boss Thomas Tuchel will be serving a touchline ban. These two sides have met 11 times in the Champions League, with the Bavarians yet to lose at home against their English rivals. In the other games, Arsenal will be looking to get their Champions League campaign off to a winning start when they lock horns with PSV Eindhoven in London. In Group C, Real Madrid welcome Union Berlin at the Bernabeu, whilst Sporting Braga will face a tough test against Napoli and their informed striker Victor Osimhen. And after 10 years away from Europe's top competition, Real Sociedad will lock horns with last year's finalists Inter Milan, who should have the mental edge in Spain after thumping arch-rivals AC Milan 5-1 in Serie A.